30% of the US trade show market is still made up, Khalil, of international travelers. 1 in 3 are now brand new to this industry. I know there's a lot of questions and uncertainty with the new administration because you hear so much about the border and you hear so much about tariffs. The US is still a very welcoming place for international travelers that follow the rules. So if you have any clients coming in for international shows, this would be a great thing for our partners to share with them.
Strong companies, lasting partnerships, powerful events. Welcome to the Experience Builders Podcast.
Chris, how was the beach?
Hey, Khalil. Well, it's been a nice long holiday weekend. We're not quite at the summer starting gun yet, but end of spring, and it was a nice time. And I am still unpacking to drive back tonight. I am going to be on a plane in the morning up to Washington, D.C. for, I head up to Legislative Action Day every year. So record turnout. I think I heard 167 companies are going to join me up there. We have appointments set with over 30 different states elected officials and staff. So it's a lot to talk about with them this year, but we can cover that in another. Well, there's a bit of a segue here, right? So we're talking about, the 4 T's. We'll be talking about tariffs, obviously. We'll be talking about the tax policy, and we had some asks in the big, beautiful bill that current administration is proposing. That seems to honor and respect what our asks were, which is great. So tariffs, taxes, talent, we still have challenges with our workforce development. The 2 things we've asked for, which is an expansion of Pell Grant Fund usage to trade skills training and certification, and the 529 savings programs that parents like us have for our kids also can now be used or will be able to be used for training and certification, not just 4-year traditional academic degrees. And travel, which is what we're going to touch on in our topic today. 30% of the U.S. trade show market is still made up, Khalil, of international travelers. I know there's a lot of questions and uncertainty with the new administration about, because you hear so much about the border and you hear so much about tariffs and international travel. And so thought it'd be great today to spend, 20 minutes or so and let everybody know the latest. And the U.S. is still a very welcoming place for international travelers that follow the rules. But there are some basic protocols. We thought we'd run through what they are today. So if you have any clients coming in for international shows, this would be a great thing for our partners to share with them, almost as a checklist. So,
for sure. This topic really opens up our audience a bit. Maybe some first-time trade show goers listening. So welcome to the Experience Builders Podcast. But for our partners that are in the industry, we hope that this is a great tool and resource that you can share with those attendees that you hope will come to your trade show booth. So let's jump in.
Okay.
What are the basics of, hey, I'm coming to the U.S. for the first time, or I'm coming for this trade show specifically. What ducks do I need to have in a row?
Well, and that's it. It's not hard, but there's probably a couple things here people pick up on. Again, I'll say the first thing worth mentioning is the U.S. entry policies to our country remain consistent with what they've always been, and lawful international travelers absolutely welcome. We know the new administration's taken a much closer look at some people, but the rules, the procedures remain the same. So I think the first thing before you travel, you want to prepare the documents that are required. Number 1 is a valid passport, right? So if you're coming to the U.S., one thing you may need to be aware of is that passport expiration date. It must be valid for at least 6 months beyond your intended stay date, unless you're a citizen of an exempt country. Some countries, they waive that rule for. But just remember, if your passport's going to expire within 6 months of your travel, you want to get it renewed before that trip. So that's the first thing I'd say. If you're in need of a visa, or what's called an ESTA, which is the Electronic System for Travel Authorization. Most business, not most, but probably half of business travelers require either what's called a B1 or a B2 visa. So that's easy enough to apply for online. There's a form that you can fill out. You've got to have your passport information, but that's where it starts. And then if you are a traveler from the Visa Waiver Program, then you would apply for ESTA, the Electronic System for Travel Authorization. And again, that's another form online. If you are applying for a visa and you've never done that, there's a form called a DS-160 form, and you can complete that online. Once you get that and submit electronically, you then schedule a visa interview at your local U.S. embassy or consulate. There's a fee to get that. It's under $200. It's about $180, $185. And you just want to bring all your required documentation to that meeting. So your passport, your photo, any supporting material. If you say you're coming for the Consumer Electronics Show or the IMTS show in Chicago, you may have some stuff that shows you've registered for that, but just anything like that is helpful for your costs.
And you probably want to have that well in advance, right?
You do. I think you do. And so most people that are taking a trip that, internationally to an international show, for example, I've got one that I do every 3 years in Germany that is huge for our industry. It's called Euroshop, and it's in Germany every year. And it's February. I'm already looking at hotels now. I haven't registered for the show yet, but I do know I'll go there. I have documentation from last year. I know how to apply for the show if I needed to. I felt I needed to bring and get that. So in the past, I have not needed a visa. We were an exempt country. I'm not sure what the new rules might be for Americans traveling to that show, so we'll keep an eye on that. But if you're looking for an expedited entry, and a lot of people will sort of wait last minute, if you're eligible, most of us in the U.S. know about the TSA program, which helps you skip lines. There's an international one called Global Entry, another one called Trusted Traveler Program. Enrolling in one of those can absolutely help you expedite your way through a lot of that travel experience. So that's what I'd say. You want to be prepared in advance for documents.
And this is something for those that haven't come to the U.S. from overseas. You don't have to do it from every country, at least every single time you're coming. A lot of times whenever you go through this interview process to establish your ESTA, you are able to come for a period of 5 years or 10 years, and then you can make trips back and forth as need be. So it's not like, oh man, I'm going to put all this money and this time and energy into this for coming. Come to multiple shows, come every year, but establish this. And it's also a good reminder for those that, hey, is your form expiring? Like, is your visa going to be expiring soon? Do you need to schedule that interview? Just go and check and make sure that you have everything in place.
It's funny. I've been on this kick lately, Khalil, where I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm just underwhelmed with a lot of TV. So I got on this kick where I'm watching videos of, American citizens that get pulled over, and it's the really belligerent people. And, they're so sure they know the laws and the rules. And the way first of all, my two college daughters I never hear that they've talked to police officers this way. I mean, it's just, I guess, but the point I would make is, to our point about coming here, just because you get the privilege and you're granted a visa, it's not a guarantee that you can come into the country. It still comes down to, which is, I think, our next topic, that experience at the Customs and Border Patrol checkpoint when you come in. They can still decline you. Although I will say that if you have your documents, you act respectful. They're going to ask you some basic questions. They're not unreasonable questions. The majority of people that have gotten those visas overwhelmingly skate through, and you're here and you're welcome. And it's But just know that, if you were to say, well, I've got a visa, you can't look, if they set some other rule breaking of some kind, or that you're going to be a troublemaker, they do still have the authority to stop you from entering the country. So I think that was the second thing at the U.S. port of entry. I thought maybe sharing a few tips of what to expect, again, for those first-time travelers. I think this is, again, we now know 1 in 3 employees that work in the trade show and business event space globally, 1 in 3 are now brand new to this industry since the pandemic recovery. So not unheard of to think that we're going to have some first-time travelers to the U.S. So the typical things that nice man or woman at the passport desk is going to ask you is, what's the purpose of your visit? And so you should know these questions and just be prepared to be calm and relaxed and answer that. I'm coming for a show in Las Vegas, and this is the name of the show. When is it? They might just make conversation just to hit you up. Wow, where you're staying? Going to see any shows while you're there? Just have the conversation. They'll ask you how long you're going to stay. They probably will ask you where you're going to be staying. What do you plan to do when you're there? They may throw you a curveball and say, do you have any criminal history or any past visa violations? Hopefully you don't. I'd be fully transparent if you say, well, I was overserved one night in a pub in Dublin, and I was caught dancing with a lampshade on my head, or whatever your thing is. But again, I think the bottom line is you want to be honest, you want to be clear and concise. I like to keep my printed copies of my flight, my hotel itinerary. Have that handy. You don't have to necessarily have it in your hand, but if asked and you need to provide some evidence of where you're staying, they don't usually ask all these, but once you're through a couple, they usually wave you through. You might be asked, they might see some interesting stamps in your book. Be prepared to answer some questions about your past travel to the U.S., as well as, a past visa. And, well, I was here 3 years ago for Euroshop or for the Consumer Electronics Show, and my boss is sending me back. They might even ask you the dates and locations of when that was. And they're kind of verifying that the printed documents they see, that's just part of it. This sounds like it's a bigger deal than it is. It happens very quickly, and stay calm and respectful during that process. I mean, you're an international travel. Khalil, does this jibe with what your experience has been?
Yeah, definitely. I think little things to remember, especially if you've never traveled on multiple layovers overseas. One, make sure that your layovers, if you do have any, are fairly scheduled out, especially if it's your first time coming to the U.S. Navigating the airport, changing terminals, all that kind of stuff can be really challenging.
Yes.
For the first time flyer that's going by themselves. So make sure you don't have a 50-minute layover and you're landing in New York and then you've got to go from New York down to Orlando, or whatever it is, right? So make sure that gap is, I would say, I'm comfortable with 2 hours, but I'm seasoned. I would say 3 hours minimum. That way you have time to get to where you need to go. If there's a delay on your flight, you're not dealing with schedule changes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And just know that that global entry is 100% worth it if you can sign up for it in advance.
It really is.
Because I've been in customs in the U.S. For at least a couple hours sometimes. And so if you only have a 2-hour layover, you've used all that time sitting in customs. So just make sure that you're scheduling out your layovers. Make sure that you've signed up for global entry if you can. It is a little bit more expensive, but it can get you through in a matter of minutes versus, maybe an hour to 2 hours. And yeah, don't give any reason to be stopped. Don't be stupid and carry things in your suitcases that you shouldn't be, including your checked bags. Because once you get into the U.S., you go and you get your baggage, then you go through customs, then you go through security again and start the process over. So little tips there. I think another thing, make sure that you're dressed comfortably. Keep an extra pair of clothes inside of your carry-on, just in case you do get stopped or your bags get lost or something happens. you're staying an extra night in the hotel, in the airport, whatever it is, you've got everything handy that you need. And I would say don't travel the day of the show, like come in advance, right?
Absolutely.
That way you have the buffer if you need to, and you're investing all this time and money to come over to the US. Spend some extra time here. Don't just go to the show, hang out, just go do different things. There's lots to see.
It's funny you say I try to do that too when I'm traveling internationally. I mean, you've gone all this way. Give yourself a day or two to enjoy some sightseeing. But you know what, with what you just said a minute ago, that reminded me. So I had a conference last summer, Malaga, Spain, and I brought my wife. And on our return flight, we were flying. Our connection was through London, and I had some choices. And there was a connection that was 1 hour and 5 minutes. And I go, oh, well, that would be great. And then I started and now the next connection, it was a 6-hour wait. And I really don't want to hang out at Heathrow airport for 6 hours. But you start thinking about, where am I going through customs? Do I do that at a U.S. port before I come over? Because some countries that's the case. Some it's you're doing it and I just knew so. And you have to retrieve your bags that you're checking. So can I do all that and still board the flight, which starts boarding 30 minutes? And I just knew there'd be no way. So we'll take the long layover. Like you said, and I'm even calling the airline going, where do I clear customs back in this? Do I do that in England? Do I do it in? And by the way, your airline is the perfect one to call, and they can tell you what the protocol would be for that. But I, like you, I err on the conservative side if I feel like I'm cutting it too close. And outside of the U.S., most of the international airports I've been in are unbelievable. They're malls. They're like Disney World. I remember being in an airport, Khalil, in Istanbul, and it was the most incredible shopping experience. And I mean, the energy was like, downtown Disney. It was a lot of fun. But you said to rest comfortably. My wife made the comment to me as we were waiting on the 6 hours. We're looking at a couple, and they were like in matching sweatsuits. And she goes, "Oh, we should." I said, "Don't say it." She goes, "You don't think we should dress alike?" When I said, "I really don't think we're those people." So. Yeah.
That's great.
So if you're traveling with your boss, can you picture Rich Hagee and I and matching, we'll look like the Beastie Boys coming through, an aging Beastie Boys coming. But no, it's great, but comfort, but still looking professional, having all your documents, being respectful, all things to remember.
Yeah. I think prepare for the worst. I mean, not to be a doomsday or anything like that, but yeah, dress comfortably, but maybe flip-flops isn't the best thing to go, walk 2 miles through an airport from terminal to terminal in, maybe wear some running shoes or something like that.
Can I ask you, if you're going to here's a test question. What type of currency? So let's say you're in a connecting city and I'm going to be 6 hours layover, but I'm coming from a place where I have some US dollars and I have whatever the destination, but I'm going to be in another place. And so in England, right, the British pound is the thing. Do you convert and get a little bit of money if you want to eat, or you just rely on your credit card and maybe do that?
Yeah, I think, in my experience, getting the currency can be kind of a waste of time nowadays. I think the card is the way to go. Make sure that, in my opinion, that you're using a credit card and not a debit card. That way, if you need to cancel any purchases or something gets stolen or whatever, you have access to your credit card company's security prevention system.
Yeah.
And then, as you get into the US, you should be able to get by with a credit card everywhere you go.
Right.
I would make sure that if you are in the US, you want to kind of preload Uber or Lyft if you're not already on those apps in your country. And that way, when you get to the airport, you can have everything exactly priced as need be. You can do it through an app versus showing up and trying to get a cab. It's not like some of the other European cities that may operate as easily on that. You can get a cab at the airport, but the price is not going to be clear. You may get pulled one over on. And so those apps will be much easier. Make sure that when you get there, that you look for the signs for the Ubers and Lyft for ride sharing.
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
because
that's a
it's
great
not
point.
going to
And
be at
I
the same
did.
place
I
as the
Ubered.
taxis.
We were Ubering in the countries we were in. It was not a problem. By the way, you're reminding me with the credit card tips. It is now protocol for me. I will call my card company the week before my trip starts and tell them the dates, because fraud alerts are so jacked up and high on credit cards. You're almost guaranteed a declined card in a restaurant or someplace. So it still happens to me sometimes, but someone can check the notes and see in there that not the restaurant, but if there's an issue and I call a card company, but usually they will make a note, and that helps me to not have the card flag.
Yeah, and tell them your layover destinations as well. Not
That's
just
great.
where you're going for the actual show, but hey, I'm going to be stopping in a day, this place, et cetera, et cetera. And usually, if you have the mobile apps, you can quickly, circumvent the fraud prevention stuff that declines your card and whatnot. So
that's true.
I think the last thing I would say, check the forecast. A lot of the U.S. is very different from other parts of the world, and it can be, you go to Seattle in the summer and you think it's going to be great, and all of a sudden it's 42 degrees. Yeah. So just make sure you're checking the forecast and don't assume anything, and that way you can pack properly.
Speaking of packing properly, when you are at that customs station, there's a customs declaration form every traveler needs to fill out. It's called your 6059B form, but you got to declare the stuff that you're supposed to declare, which is typically agricultural products, right? They don't want you bringing fruits in or certain plants. There's bugs that can hurt the ecosystem in certain places. I have had that even with Hawaii and Puerto Rico in the States when I'm traveling from an island. There's certain things they don't want to have brought onto that island, and there's bugs there that they don't want leaving. If you're traveling with currency of over $10,000, that has never been my problem. But yeah, if you are traveling with large sums of cash, be prepared to declare it, and they may ask you why. So have a good, legitimate reason why. And occasionally there's merchandise like beyond personal use. I've seen people traveling with banner stands and a portable display. Be prepared to list that, and that's with your luggage, and you're going to get it at baggage claim, and it's a 10-foot pop-up, or, like I said, it's a banner stand for a presentation. And I've been in Brazil, and they made me pull those banner stands out and roll them up and show them what the messaging was. They weren't understanding what I was saying. So just know all that takes a little extra time, but just know if you are not traveling with the typical things and personal items in your suitcase, other than sealed snacks, no fruit or know what the foods you can't bring in, cash over $10,000, and then, the odd item that's not for personal use. Those are the things I think I would call out. Anything else you've ever been?
Man, there's always something with travel.
Yeah.
I think check your cell phone plan, make sure that it's compatible in the US, that you notify your cell phone company. Then also you probably want to make sure that you are bringing the correct adapters from your country to the US if you're coming
that's a great one. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Because inevitably I forget when I'm at the airport. I'm trying to charge my phone at the airport. I can never get the one or I either don't know it, and then you go, you can buy this and it works for 13 countries, and I can't figure out.
Yeah. So. You always at least want to have one in your carry-on, especially because then nothing's worse than needing to have your phone to get the Uber at the airport, but you're out of battery.
Right.
And now you don't know how to charge, and you can't find an outlet that fits and all that kind of stuff. So planes are pretty good about having the right USB adapters for USB-C or USB. And so just bring one of each. And you can usually charge your phone on the plane. And even in the airports, there'll be outlets that have the USB or USB-C connection where you can just plug directly in, and you don't have to have your brick. that fits the country. So, one day we'll figure it all out and it'll be a universal outlet, but
it's true.
That day is not today. So,
well, a couple other final what to do and what to avoid that I think are worth noting. I always carry all my requirement documentation with me. Usually I've got I was about to say fanny pack, but I'm not saying fanny pack. I've got a European carry-all. And so I'll have a little pouch or pamphlet I'll carry that with. I usually like to keep my passport on me. When you're declaring, just make sure you're telling the truth on whatever you're declaring. Know your visa rules and understand and follow those conditions. I tend to be pretty familiar with your full itinerary. So if you were asked or questioned about it, you just know you're going to be able to recall that. Just be patient and respectful. Remember, we're the guests, or tell, if you're coming to the U.S., you're the guest. I find most international travelers are probably more respectful than Americans are when we're traveling abroad. We've all heard the explanation of the ugly American, but just be patient and cooperative during that screen. I would avoid misrepresentation of any information.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would, but I've seen people get uncomfortable and they don't tell the truth. And you can get yourself pretty quickly into a jam there. I think failing to declare any unrestricted goods. Well, it was just a banana. Well, you know what? You're going to spend a little time in a room with some people you really didn't want to meet. And your party may meet you at the hotel because you're going to be a while. Attempting to work or study, this was an interesting one, without the proper visa. If you're coming to a show for 5 days, you can't just make a whim and decide to accept the internship or apprenticeship and start working. I'm only going to be here for 90 days, but it's an offer I couldn't refuse. Yeah, that's not how it goes.
That's actually an interesting question. Do you come as a tourist coming to the show, or hey, I'm coming to the show for work? What do you categorize yourself as?
I think if it's a temporary, short term, for some reason, I think it was if it's under 3 weeks, like business visas are for under 3 weeks, or the
Gotcha.
show travel is what I've been used to. So, so-and-so has done it, or this particular administration does not seem to be very forgiving. And I think everybody can see the news and read the climate right now. So I would, again, know those rules and stick with them. Overstaying that authorized period is, you're at risk of, even if you get out of the jam, you're at risk of not being welcome back. And if it's, if you plan on coming back to the U.S., but those, we're covering some basics here. So those of you that travel internationally frequently, or if you're an international traveler in the U.S. often, this is not unfamiliar to you. But there may be new people at your company or young people that are starting to be part of the business event team. This might be helpful for them. And if you're a U.S. exhibit house, a partner of ours, and you're listening to this, I think this is a worthy share with any of your international customers that are coming this way. In the notes, we'll put also a link to there's a connection where you can find a list of the U.S. embassies and consulates and custom and border patrol travel information that has all this stuff and then some more stuff. But always good links to share when we're talking about international travel. So,
yeah. Well, hopefully this is helpful for our listeners and beyond. I'm sure many people will find this who have never heard of us. So hope that your travel to the U.S. is safe, that you have a pleasant time. And it's still a great time to come and visit the U.S. and
absolutely
lots of great shows to attend.
Absolutely. So thanks for spending a few minutes going through this with me, Khalil. This was good to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. See you around.
See you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Experience Builders podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content. Visit our website at crewxp.com to learn more about us. See you in the next one.